Sure. Sure. So we've been around since 2007. We are right in that 3 million revenue range. Sole proprietor myself. Got about 25 employees.
As we planned, I should say. And this is, yeah, as we planned. And this is
Someone's talking.
You're gonna listen to Joe.
I apologize. Didn't mute myself.
No problem. And it's one of those where the whole origins of us formalizing the co-managed was, like I said, we're doing it. So right now we're probably 40% to 50% co-managed on some level or another, roughly speaking. But here's the thing. I was going to give you some history, but screw that. One of the things we've decided, or we discovered, and this was roughly 2 years ago, is we were looking at our marketing and our sales pitch. And we realized that we were, and I don't mean to talk smack about any kind of marketing programs or anything along those lines, but by and large, managed service provider marketing consists of two conversations. Conversation number one: let me tell you how cool my MSP is. We do these fantastic things. We are great. We're keeping people secure. We back stuff up. We do 365. We do cloud. We do all these wonderful things because we are freaking wonderful, and just constantly just on and on and on about how wonderful we as an MSP are. The second piece of marketing is, well, if you guys aren't our clients, you probably suck. You probably have been hacked. Your backups probably don't work. I mean, I'm amazed you're kind of still in business because your hardware is probably failing and blah, blah, blah. So you had this kind of, we're going to put ourselves on this pedestal and we're going to talk crap about what you're currently going through. As you can imagine, that conversation works well when you're trying to talk a CEO or executive into basically not having faith in where they're currently at, and hopefully, oh my hero, you're coming to rescue me, as far as you're the only solution. But if you're talking to internal IT or someone who has any kind of pride in what they do regarding IT, you're adversarial from day one. Okay. And we were trying to get around that. And we've always been, we're the cool guys, we're the whatever. But it finally occurred to me about 2 years ago that really, and there's a saying in marketing, nobody buys drills, they buy holes. And it really kind of realized that what people should be doing, and that's why Alex should be in jail. Oh, you're back.
I'm back. I heard something go click and I looked over and the watt box that runs my cable modem, my switch, my router, everything had just clicked and just gone. And then it just powered right back up. So who knows how long I'll be here? We'll see.
We were just talking about some of the traditional marketing of MSPs, you might standard spiel about all that.
Yeah.
And what we realized 2 years ago here was that what we should be talking about is what is the goal of every MSP, of every internal IT person, of every IT vendor. The goal is for the client to be as productive and successful and secure through IT resources as possible. We don't care whether it's just us or it's us and the internal IT, or it's just them or whatever. It doesn't matter. We want to talk about the results. And there's a book out and a strategy out that really nails this down called Story Brand. And
love that book.
Yeah, it's a great book and it really works well for MSPs if you do it. And the core behind it is the guy is a movie freak. I mean, that's where the whole thing comes from. And really it's summed up by nobody wants to be rescued by Luke Skywalker. They want to be Luke Skywalker. And so the discussion, the examples, the promise, the whatever is not about how great you are and what a great job you're going to do, but how successful they're going to be and how fantastic they can be and how you'd love to help partner with them to make that happen, and you know how. If you just change your focus to that conversation, you no longer being adversarial to the internal IT. Because if you're talking to the CEO, you say that we're going to make you guys as productive as possible, and we're going to partner with your internal IT people so that together we're going to be really knocking it down and nailing it. And if you're talking to the internal IT person, you're going to say, hey, we know we want the employees to think of you as the savior, that you guys are handling the IT needs and all that. And we're going to partner with you because we know how to make that happen. And we can make you look like the hero you never thought you could be. And if you just simply, it now no longer matters whether you're talking about a pure MSP, whether you're talking about a co-managed, whether you're not even sure, because you're talking about the end results, and the end results are the same, or should be.
Which is making your customer successful, right? It's about them, not us.
Yeah.
Bob, do you ever do silo or co-manage when there isn't an internal company, team?
We have not, it's interesting you say that. Unlike all the other comments were not interesting, apparently. But so as far as silo goes, silo would be, you could kind of do that, but you would basically be saying to the client, we take no responsibility for anything outside of this, right? Because apparently nobody else is either.
Right.
If they don't have internal IT.
Right.
Now, I can see how this could scale down somewhat. So if you had a client, let's say they're a 4 or 5 employee shop, they're not doing a whole heck of a lot, they got whatever, but they do have a server and they want to make sure that they've got backups and blah, blah, blah. I can see how a BCDR or a backup solution or the like would be something they'd be willing, because we need to have our backups, we need to have them tested. Whereas they may not want to go for the full managed services. Now that then becomes a question for you to answer, whether you wanted to do we're going to do a silo IT for the BCDR relationship, and we're going to do a time and material block, whatever, or delegate it to anybody, or we just don't care for all their other stuff. But you need to make sure that however you define that you're creating reasonably fine lines of expectation. But actually, that would be an interesting, I hadn't really thought of that for going after small clients who look at traditional MSP bills as way too high, to offer a silo that's just going to do the critical stuff, and the other stuff you have it at an exorbitant time and material rate. If that's cool for you as a business, I don't see why that can't work.
If you're
like a
co-managed,
break fix
if you're
with silo.
co-managed with your nephews,
You've
We
never,
use a tier there, right? We've got like an entry level, program, right? And it's core services, and it's exactly something like that. The cost point is, the price point's much lower, and it's these 2 things as opposed to these 10, and then we would add silo for backup, or we would add silo for whatever.
the challenge that I would have with that would be, and this is my paranoia, would be on the liability side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're not careful on the managed service agreement, there is now some of this is people saying, the sky is falling, and sometimes they're right. But where people are basically saying, if you're providing any IT service, there's an implicit
security.
There's an implication that you're responsible for everything if something breaks, unless it's in writing. And the challenge on that is that, so do you have this master service agreement that basically says, here's my statement of service, this is what I'm going to do. By the way, I'm not responsible or liable or legal for anything. Sign here.
And how is that going to hold up in court? Because I'm not responsible for anything, typically holds up very poorly in court. So there's a conversation for somebody with a degree way different from mine or Bob's.
Yep.
Just be careful with that one.
Yeah, I got a client that only wants us to manage his servers, not his desktops, nothing else, just his servers.
We have the same.
So what are they doing for their desktops?
Their internal IT is taking care of their.
So we call that desktop commits. Okay. Now, what we do for desktop commits is we actually, and it's kind of what like Alex was saying, sort of, we give, and I'm just going to make this simple and just talk RMM and PSA. Okay. But it can be your entire stack, all the stamps, however much you want to do it. But essentially we give them the access to the tools necessary to manage and maintain the desktops. And we basically we deploy the RMM and the PSA exactly like it was a pure MSP solution. So everywhere across the board. But we then give the internal IT folks access. We call it desktop commits because they're responsible for the desktops. So they handle all the desktops. All of the end user submitted tickets go to them. All desktop, phone, tablet device tickets go to them. And all the server, switch, firewall, whatever that sort of stuff goes to our people. And so the nice thing on that type of situation is my techs, they don't care what their plan is. They just handle the ticket.
So are you leveraging your PSA really heavily to understand all the agreements that your tech just literally has to put in their time and the PSA does it on the back end? How do you avoid a billing nightmare based on one customer to the next to the next?
Okay, so by not having 20 different ways of doing it.
Okay.
So we have full commits, which means the client is responsible for everything that can always escalate.
Right.
Okay. We have desktop commits. All of the end user submitted tickets and desktop and phone, device, tablet, all those tickets go to the internal IT. All the server, switch, infrastructure stuff goes to us, and then server commits, which is the reverse.
Yep.
And essentially the way the tickets are, they go to different service boards. We're ConnectWise managed with Datto RMM. They go to different service boards, and they're billable or not billable accordingly. And the two things we do as far as our involvement on the tickets that they're responsible for is, one, advice is always free. Okay, I cannot emphasize this enough. Because the one thing every client we've ever talked to, when they're talking about the prior provider, none of them ever said, we love it when they nickel and dime us because that told us we weren't charging too much, or everybody complained about nickel and diming. So we basically, it's built in, we build in the advice. So it's free advice, but if you want to escalate it, that'll be billable.
If they want you to do the work, it's billable.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's good though, because you never want them to feel like they can't come to you and ask a question, because then they're going to do it the wrong way. And you're going to go, well, you should have come and asked me. And they're going to go, well, I didn't want to pay the bill to ask you. Like, that just gets into this back and forth that damages the relationship, right?
And the other thing is, when they escalate a ticket, offer to let them watch.
Yeah.
Especially if it's something that this may happen again. So let me show you how to do it. We're going to document it, but we're also going to show you how to do it. So if you want to handle it next time.
And you're giving them access to your IT glue or whatever documentation system you're using for that. Trisha asked the question, are you white labeling your services? And Trisha, I assume you mean, the backups and some of those kind of things, not just the managed services, help desk kind of stuff.
No, the help desk stuff as well. Or do they know that they're calling?
Oh, so do the employees know they're calling a third party?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And this is one where, Alex, to your point, I want to be as stupid as humanly possible. And I'm really good at it for the most part. Be careful, because
humans are really good at stupid.
Yeah, but it's what I don't want to have, this decision tree when the phone rings,
right?
Or this, how do we present ourselves, or anything along those lines. If somebody's concerned that we want our employees to know that desktop support is handled by another company, it's not handled by our own employees, I'm not sure they'd be a great fit for us anyway, because we're transparent.
Yeah.
We're all here for the same thing. We're all here to work together and to make things great for organization and that. And so for me, white labeling, that's not me. But I can see how it would be for other folks.
Well, and I can see businesses that would really want it. So if somebody could offer that service, I can see where there would be a desire for that.
We're just finally starting to get pushback on that from some of the bigger organizations that we're working with. So I was just curious as
they're pushing back because they want it.
They want white labeling. They don't want their employees to know that they're calling us, and it's never been an issue before. So I was just curious whether or not anybody else was dealing with that, and how were they being successful if they were white labeling, because I agree with you, Bob, like keep it as simple as possible. You know, the last thing you want to do is, you know, say, thank you for calling McDonald's when it's Burger King calling in.
Well, and the other thing though, and this is, and by the way, my spidey sense is rampant. It always goes off all over the place. And this would be a case here. So if all of a sudden, because it sounds like, so how long have you been working with this client in this role?
We're just actually beginning to work with this particular client. We do the same type of services with a whole bunch of other organizations, and we've just never had anybody push back so hard on us with that.
Okay, so then my spidey sense is tingling a little less, but it's one of those where I would ask and push a little bit on the question of why. Are you really looking for something? Are you looking to shore up the fact that our company's IT isn't as thin as we thought it was? Or are we looking to make it sound like to make sure that people don't think we're using the lowest, you know, the cheapest solution for support? Or what's the goal behind that? Because I do think that people sometimes make the wrong request for the right reason, or the right request for the wrong reason, or haven't thought things all the way through. That's
well, outsourcing has such a dirty word, right? And they may just be ashamed or embarrassed or afraid to use that word with their team because it's been given a bad reputation. We'll say that.
I think it might be a little bit of that. The other thing, you know, is, and we have asked those questions. We can't just, you know, we can't get any further than, yeah, we just don't want them to know that they're not calling, you know, internal IT. So, yeah. So I was just curious if, and I know it's a total complete pain and everything else. I just was kind of curious whether or not anybody else was successful at it, because I agree with you. Keep it as simple as possible to be successful doing something like that. But if there was a way we hadn't thought of, I'd sure like to learn it.
I mean, what we've done is, more often than not, we have some kind of party announcement. Say, hey, we're going to come in and partner with you guys to create this great relationship, and we'll basically show up and bring donuts for everybody and all that, and we make sure that we are there with the IT people doing walkabouts, and that we are together. And when my people are talking, they're basically, yeah, we're going to work with Larry and Susan over here. They're doing a great job, but we think we're going to be able to actually bring some additional stuff to bear. This is going to be fantastic, because I love the way he was doing that, or she was doing that, or whatever. And so that it is a, wow, this is going to be even cooler.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. We you know, we didn't do as good a job of that as we could. I can honestly say that.
Oh, and I'm not saying we're perfect by any shape.
Right. The things you learn is you do more of it. We didn't do a lot of it either. It wasn't our go-to. We probably wouldn't have taken most of our co-managed customers. The ones that we did were usually schools that we had the expectation that over time they would give us all of their business, not just part of their business. And that was how we did it. You know, we thought if we went in and did a good job, it was a land and expand play for us. We weren't committed to co-managed services. So
yeah.
And
that's one of those
job.
That's a term that I'm learning to really hate, is foot in the door.
Yeah.
Because there's both there are a lot of people who are willing to take sucky agreements, a lot of abuse from the client, low profit margins, whatever, because something else may come out of this and it's going to be great. And similarly, there's also been clients or MSPs who've gone into the co-manage, basically going, we're going to work with the IT people until we can replace them.
Yeah.
And both those circumstances just don't work. And it's fine. I remember the first time I actually got up on stage and talked about co-managed, and this was like 5-6 years ago. I think it was a Robin Robbins thing. Yeah, Greg, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. But I got up and I basically, you gotta work. It's gotta be collaboration. You gotta work together. It's a team thing. Everybody wins. It's your classic win-win-win or lose-lose-lose. That's it. And this guy came up behind me or came up afterwards. Didn't come up behind me. That's creepy. But he basically said, man, this fantastic. I get what you're saying, because that way, when that guy screws up, you can replace him. And I'm like,
That's not what I said.
No.
That's funny. We had a couple prepped questions. I want to make sure we get to those. So,
Yep.
Best practices around transitioning tickets back and forth between internal IT and the MSP. And there was a couple of folks who weighed in on this and said, well, vacation happens and stuff that should be theirs, but they're not there and we're covering for them for a little while, or maybe they just don't have enough knowledge and they get a ticket they shouldn't, we get a ticket we shouldn't, maybe we don't have the knowledge, or urgent, something that's urgent to them isn't urgent to us, or vice versa. What are your best practices around making sure that some of that back and forth between their board and your board and their work and your work is successful?
So first of all, when we talk about vacation, so that's extended absence type of situations. That's fairly simple from the standpoint of you either turn off the automatic transfer of tickets temporarily, so they go to you, but they go to you billable. And you talk with the client ahead of time. So you basically, hey, we're willing to do this job, but everything we do on this stuff is going to be billable.
Yep.
Or they make it so that somebody else gets the tickets on their end, and they're taught to at least identify when something is important. Basically like the urgency and criticality, that type of thing, in which case they can make the judgment call. And we communicate to our group, hey, such and such is on vacation, or this, that, or the other thing. So it's one of those, as long as you have some kind of reasonable conversation, and so that they understand that the additional responsibility that you take on is also results in additional cost to them. Consultant's credo, your check is our command. But you're being clear about it ahead of time.
That's a good one. I like that.
I learned that first in the mid-'80s. That's how old I am. So as far as knowledge transfer, we talked about that a little bit. Again, I can't stress enough. When they want advice, when they need advice, you encourage that openly, because you want that relationship. You want that stickiness. And if they know you're not going to try to sell them stuff, you're not going to try to be condescending, you're not going to whatever, they'll trust you more, they'll like you more, and it's a better relationship. And again, if they escalate a ticket so it's billable because you're going to do the work, like Alex, like you were saying, that's great, but always offer them the opportunity to learn from watching, or learn some way, or even do part of that task, depending upon the complexity.
Right.
And then the knowledge transfer happens through a result of all these things, if that makes sense.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think you've covered most of this.
Yep.
Somebody just asked to talk about shared responsibility and what belongs to who, and I think the best answer for that is it depends, right? Yep. And document it well. But then how do you avoid scope creep, I think is the simplest way to say, I think, what this person was trying to ask for. And how do you manage it when it happens, or when it starts to happen, when you start to see it or feel it?
So I've seen both scope. What's the opposite of scope creep?
I don't know.
Run away.
We'll have to make that up.
Yeah.
It's your chance to come up with another definition.
It's one of the failures we've had, because we've had failures on the commit side. No question, just like we've had failures on pure MSP, all of that kind of fun stuff. And almost always it's because the internal IT and we were not on the same page. Give a classic example. There was a company, and this was when there's no bad guys in this. But the company had a single IT guy. He had actually been to some of our lunch and ours webinars. He loved us, wanted to do co-manage, was absolutely spot on, wanted it because he hated end users and was just really sick and tired of end users. He wanted to focus on servers, but he needed some advice because he wasn't a huge Windows guy. He was more of a Linux guy, and it was a Windows environment. So okay, so we'll do a server comments where he handles all the servers, the switches, the firewalls. We'll handle the desktops and end users. Flash forward a year later, he has yet to let the users submit tickets to us. We're not getting any of the tickets. Why not? Because he's faster doing it than giving them to us. And I'm like, well, but that's what you, oh, I know, but I need to get this stuff done or handled fast. And he's sloppy as all get out. So he's not really solving, and we're like, you're paying us to do this. Let us do this. Yeah, I know, I really should. Okay, well, that's weird. Then the other side of the fence is he's calling us for advice on how to use these Windows servers. And we're giving him the best practices. No, I don't want to do it because in Linux, I can do it like this. So how do I do it like make my Windows servers act like they're Linux boxes?
Format.
There's no need to do any of this whatsoever.
Right.
He's got a Windows Active Directory.
Right.
But he wants to have DNS not integrated with Active Directory. He wants to have an LDAP. I mean, and so what ends up happening is he's asking us for advice, and our advice is, well, don't do it that way. You know, and so it ended up after about 2 years, we parted, and you know, they paid their bills, they're still fine, all that kind of fun stuff, and they still did.
It's just not a fit, right? It's a
It
square
just was
peg
a
round hole.
horrible fit.
Yeah.
Because this guy wouldn't recognize a swim lane if it bit him in the tuchus. And on our part, we never really held him down to say, this is how it's got to be.
Right.
Shame on us.
Yeah. And I think we were bad about that with our customers. We didn't want to offend them. We didn't want to upset them, right?
Yeah.
They were paying their bills. It wasn't a bad contract, even as co-managed. I mean, it was $3,000 a month more when that guy left. But, you know, until then, we didn't want to upset anybody. And we go behind closed doors and have a conversation with the principal at school and go, look, you know, Mike just sends us all the work and we're doing most of it. We're billing you for these overages that you shouldn't be getting billed for. And I hate that I'm billing you for this, but we didn't push back and go, hey man, this is your work. You go do your work.
And you know, we've had issues. We've all had issues as managed service providers where there's a single party at a pure MSP organization that abuses the relationship. Whether it is they're insisting on doing things their own way, they won't involve, they'll come into work with, you know, 20 devices bought on eBay or Best Buy or anything along those lines, and we've got to manage them. It's the same thing here with co-managed, but it's a little more nuanced. And one of the things that I always look at when we first talk to an IT department is we try to figure out whether they're top heavy, bottom heavy, or skinny. Okay, and think about it from a skill set standpoint. You've got level 1, level 2, level 3, and CIO. Okay. A top heavy would be an organization that has the CIO level job, maybe the level 3 job, but doesn't have anybody below or doesn't have enough resources below. Okay. A bottom heavy organization would be the opposite. The bottom or body heavy.
Body heavy. There you go. That works.
The bottom heavy would be a group that has maybe a level that has level 1s, maybe a level 2, but nobody who's a level 3 or virtual CIO. Okay, thin would be where they've got the right people, but not enough of them. And usually within a 15 to 30-minute conversation, I can figure out which of those three, because that's where commits comes into play. And there's a fourth one. The fourth one will be where they don't have specialized skills. That's where the silo IT comes into play. Okay. But those three, if you can figure out which three of those the potential client is, you're going to have a much better idea of how to approach it from a value add standpoint. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And those buckets make sense. If anybody wants to grab a screenshot there while those are all up there, just pull your own notes. The last question that somebody wanted to know was about accountability and coaching and counseling the on-site IT versus having the right person in the right seat. And I think this goes back to an organization that's bottom heavy, maybe where you're managing, you know, where you're providing the top portion of the skill set, the top portion of almost management. But these folks had deployed a BrightGauge dashboard just for internal IT to kind of show and have some accountability there to show how the person on site is doing. Have you done anything else to make sure that you have metrics and methods for coaching and teaching the on-site people versus identifying when you've just got the wrong human being and trying to address that issue differently?
So we haven't done great on this one because it hasn't been a huge demand. So we just had our our 15th annual party last night. We took over a video arcade bar for the evening. We had about 85, 90 people there.
Nice.
And I was talking to about 3 of our CIO level commits people came in, and I spoke with each one of them, and we were talking about high level things they needed to take a look at, things we had down the line as far as some cyber insurance opportunities.
Well, you throw a hell of a party, Bob.
What's that?
You throw a hell of a party. Come to the party. We'll talk about cybersecurity.
There were drinks and there were video games.
Okay.
So, but it was one of those where I'm going to talk about the CIO level stuff with them. Then I go over and I was talking to a couple of the techs. For the techs, I'm talking about, okay, one of them I was talking about what kind of certification path can they go on? What are some of the things? So always remember, whenever you're introducing change to organizations, to people, whatever, there's 2 things that people are driven by: WIFM and NIMBY. WIFM is what's in it for me. How are you going to make the internal IT employees' lives better?
Yep.
You're going to make it better immediately by giving them tools, opportunities, and resource and support to make them do their job better. And you're also going to help them in the long run, because you can give them advice as far as where to go next, how to go, so on and so forth. For the senior level people, you're talking more on a peer-to-peer level, depending upon how your group is. So there it can be more of, although we have actually run into some times where the CIO is new at that job. So you can kind of give some mentorship on that, but understand where they're personally at and give some guidance and coaching. I would love to see, if you've got a Brightgate, I'd love, somebody wants to send me a screenshot of the
I
Brightgate.
forget who said that on the other call, but I'll go back and look. Whoever it was, are you here today? Does this jump out to anybody? I'll have to go look.
Cool.
Because it was an interesting concept to me, because we had never tried anything like that.
Yeah.
And they said, we're mostly using it to coach and counsel and make sure that this person gets the, if there is a performance problem, they know what their KPIs are, they know what their standards are. Kind of like us, internal IT typically has a tendency to not be held accountable, right? Nobody understands what they do. Nobody knows how long anything takes. We're at an MSP, we're cranking out the billable hour, right? Or we're cranking out the utilization rate. We try and do a better job of holding folks accountable. And I think this was an effort to kind of downstream that to your client. Dave, you came off mute. Were you thinking?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question of Bob real quick. He was talking about change. You said there's 2 things, and you got the what's in it for me, and what was the other one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Not in my backyard. NIMBY.
Not NIMBY.
The what's in it for me, I want to see gain. I want to see new things. I want to see cool things. Not in my backyard. Do not ask me to sacrifice. Those are the 2 things. And any change whatsoever, when you are trying to talk people, including yourself, into accepting some kind of change, do a quick inventory of WIFM and NIMBY for those people, and not for their organizations, not for their department, for them personally.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, I had a question. This is Greg. Bob, in any of your contracts, do you formally include IT staff evaluation?
No. And part of the reason why is because we don't have a formal way of doing that. Although if I can steal that Brightgate dashboard, I might be willing to change that. The other issue is that I really don't want to be adversarial, even if it's just envisioned. And if it turns out that I'm going to be used for part of their annual reviews or anything along those lines, if I'm not careful, I would be concerned, and I'm paranoid about this, obviously. I would be concerned about coming off as if I'm here to, give them reviews so that we can fire them and I can take over their
It takes away your ability to be unquestionably the supporter and the buddy of the IT guy, as opposed to yeah. Huh. And I would imagine even with a Brightgate dashboard, you can't avoid that.
Yeah, the one thing we are doing, or we were doing before the pandemic, and we've talked about coming back with this, but we haven't gotten there yet, is we were doing what we called quarterly client training. every quarter we would have a get together, and only clients were invited, but as
Is this
many-
just their IT people or is it everybody?
It was everybody, and we would do 3 topics over the morning period, and we would break out into 3 separate rooms, and we would do them twice, so you could attend any 2 of the 3. One was always a tech topic, and it could be how to use the RMM better, it could be, you know, Active Directory stuff, it could be whatever. The other 2 were more end user or management oriented, and those were reasonably well attended. And we've
Really?
talked about whether we want to bring those back or not. And so far, it hasn't bubbled to the surface yet.
So speaking of things that have kind of changed as between COVID and a recession, are you seeing as we get more talk of everything's more expensive, et cetera, more folks looking for co-managed IT to supplement as opposed to building in-house? Or are
So
you seeing any kind of a change there in the percentage of business that you're getting?
yes, no.
Fair answer.
So here's the thing. I used to be CIO at a sunroom manufacturing and selling distribution company that had about 40 locations, about 60 million sales, something along those lines. Those numbers change every time I tell that story because I can't remember anymore. And I remember back in the mid-late 90s, the advertising marketing director was bitching and moaning to the CEO about how they can't get any leads because there was a mini recession that was going on and nobody was buying whatever. And the CEO said, that's bullshit. He said, when things are going great and the economy is going great, we need to advertise and market that you should buy a sunroom because you've got this money. It's a luxury spend, but you deserve it because blah, blah, blah. When things are tight, we should market or go out there and talk about how you can't afford to buy that house you wanted to buy or to buy that full 4-season room enclosure. So let's go with a sunroom instead because it costs less money, but you're still going to have a great time with it.
And you're going to be spending more time at home in this recession.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is what he was saying was that the goods and services don't change, but the messaging, how you focus on the goods and services do. So to answer your question, one of the things that we've been doing in the past year, and if you take a look at like our learning center, our YouTube channel, all that, we are doing a lot of they ask you answer. So we're doing a lot of videos that answer the questions that our clients might have. We've done like 50 videos so far this year, and we really started in March for this new program. Companies are looking. There are companies that are doing very, very well that are looking to extend themselves and are having trouble finding people to hire who are interested. There are people who are trying to cut costs. You know, it doesn't matter. But they still need to get the best value out of IT that they can. And we're actually starting a webinar series next week that we're calling Recession Proof Your IT. And every month, and Alex, you're going to be joining us in September, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Every month we're doing a topic. So this month it is 5 ways to control your IT costs. Next month it's going to be putting together your budget to manage your IT expenditures. Then we're doing cyber insurance. We're doing some other value, blah, 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 all of which are going to be ways of how can you improve use of your IT.
Yep.
Right now, but one of the things we've been doing is we no longer really talk about co-managed versus pure MSP. And if you look at our website on Simplex IT, it's story branded and it really talks more about what the ultimate goal of the journey is, and then breaks down how we do it, whether or not you have internal IT. Okay. So I think right now the message is not that things are changing, so you should push co-managed or pure MSP more or less. It's changing, so you should push the value that you're presenting to the client more succinctly as it relates to potential recession. So I wouldn't go out with how do you want to manage the spectacular growth that this wonderful economy is giving us? Managed services, blah, blah, blah. What I would do is something along the lines of, you want to get every cent of value you can out of your organization. Great IT is going to help you do that. Let's partner together, including your internal IT source. And I would rephrase that to make sure that the best is happening.
Right.
Something along those lines.
For those of you who don't already follow Bob on LinkedIn, I threw his LinkedIn in there. Bob is great about his marketing, his videos, and the marketing message is spot on. And I know you've put a lot of time and energy into that. But I also know that before you really thought it was ready, you just took the plunge and threw some of it out there, which I absolutely applaud you for. Do you want to just really quickly wrap up and end on kind of how that the quick version of how that journey went? Because it's a pretty cool story. I mean, as you hired a social media person and started doing all of that with just quick, easy videos.
Yeah, I mean, we started actually about 2 years ago doing daily videos every business day, and we're just, something we could communicate in a year or two. But this year, or towards the end of last year, we were on the story brand path, and we really looked into They Ask You Answer. And They Ask You Answer was actually, it's a marketing concept that the guy who started it sells swimming pools.
Yeah. It's
And
a great book. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it works so well with StoryBrand. They're made for freaking each other, and especially in the service business, which is what we're in. And essentially, the way the guy was saying was, anytime anybody ever asks you a question about your goods, your product, your service, your company, whatever, make a video about it that just answers that question.
And it's even easier in our space because half of that can come from trouble tickets. You have a repository to go dig through of questions that people have asked you that should be that you can look at and go, somebody else has that question too. There would be value if I just went and put that out there. And that helps to establish you as an expert.
Yeah. And you also have that situation of what is an MSP? Why should someone use an MSP? Why should someone not use an MSP?
Yeah.
What is risk?
Well, and Marcus, one of the guy who wrote They Ask You Answer, one of his favorites is, why don't you just post the price on the website, right? And you can actually go out and explain that, because no two environments are the same, et cetera, et cetera. Yep. You can actually talk through that. Instead of taking pushback from people for not having a pricing page, go explain why you don't have a pricing page and invite them to give some rough estimate as to where they might fall, and to come have a conversation with you about more of it. And his point is, the more they read on your website, the more they understand, and you set yourself up as an expert, the more likely they are to come and engage with you and feel consulted and not sold. And that's why it's such a good book. I mean, it's a fantastic read. And
we doubled down to finish what Alex was asking about. So we doubled down this year on deciding to go that route, and hired a social media person and a videographer, Cassie and Drew, I should say. And we've got, like I said, if you look at our learning center is a little bit behind the YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel right now has about 55 videos. And those are that's separate from our original YouTube channel, which has hundreds. But these are all about the whole, how can we answer questions, not selling, but just so that somebody can make better informed decisions, because then they're more likely to come to us.
And am I remembering this right, that you sit down and do a week's worth at a time or something like that? You record a whole bunch of them so that you can just drop them out over time?
So yesterday we did one on what are phishing attacks. We did another one on why can't I pick and choose your services? Another one on why should you use an MSP, because we did one about why you should not use an MSP.
Oh, I didn't see the second one. I'll have to go find it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, Bob, I appreciate you coming out. We've kept everybody over, and I have another meeting I've got to jump to. But guys, I put Bob's LinkedIn in the chat. Follow him on LinkedIn. He's freaking amazing. I love talking to Bob, mostly because he's the crotchety old geezer that I aspire to be. We have a good time together, but obviously he runs a great business, and he's got some interesting perspectives. I love what you're doing on marketing, Bob. It's hitting on all cylinders. So hopefully it's doing good things for the business. But appreciate everybody coming out today. Enjoy your Friday. It's 4:00 on the East Coast, so you're very close to beer 30. With that, I'll let everybody roll.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for coming out.
Hey, Joe, appreciate it.
Later, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Bye-bye.
Sorry.
We're just doing the goodbyes.